Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box. This is a reaction video of sorts. I'm reacting to a trend because there's something going viral on X, which is a video of a conductor. I'm trying to find out her name. Let's see. It looks like she is called Dalia Seveska. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing the name correctly. She's from Finland, according to the video. And the video that's going viral is of her conducting the final movement, a portion of the final movement from Dvorak's Ninth Symphony with the Orchestre de Paris, the Parisian orchestra. And from the video, it appears that it is taken at a rehearsal because both she and the members of the orchestra are wearing, street clothes, casual clothes, as opposed to your standard penguin suit for the main performance. And the video's gone viral because some commentators have taken umbrage with the fact that she has a very physically expressive conducting style, with some praising the style and some, the ones particularly who went viral, saying that it is over the top and too much. So I wanted to take an objective look at this because I've produced what I consider some of the finest videos on the internet about the history of conducting and the central importance of conducting. For those who are new to this channel, the conductor is as important as the composer, and in some cases more important than the composer in crafting what the audience hears. The actual score that the composer writes in musical notation is sort of it's guidance in terms of where the destinations are. This is point A on the map, this is point B, this is point C. But how to get there is up to the conductor. And some conductors opt for the scenic route, the route most beautiful, while others are just racing with, your Waze or Google Maps in hand to get from point A to B as fast as possible, sometimes literally, because the worst conductors fail to understand that the essence of European classical music is the melody guides rhythm, which is very different than the classical music of other cultures like those of West Africa, South Asia, East Asia, where the melody tends to be guided by the rhythm. In European classical music, it is the melody which the rhythm must be subservient to. I don't know, did I say that the other way around? Anyway, in other words, so in Europe, melody tells rhythm what to do. In most other classical cultures, rhythm tells melody what to do. There, that time I said it right. Goodbye, schizophrenia. Hello, Vietnam. Anyway, back to the lecture at hand. So, this brings what this viral commentary on this conductor has risen to the fore once again is whether there's a right or wrong way to conduct from a physical point of view. Most of my previous videos on conducting talk all about the results, the sonic and emotional, visceral results produced by the conductor. But the actual physicality of the conductor is an important subject to talk about. It's one largely absent from our minds when we're just listening to the music on your Spotify's, your record player, whatever. But if you're there watching a live performance, or if you're watching a video of it, as most of these people on X are doing, it of course becomes an important component. And physicality, of course, is important because, after all, that is the way that the conductor communicates to the orchestra. They're not speaking, they're not shouting, they're not singing. They are using their arms and occasionally other limbs to communicate their artistic roadmap to the orchestra. Now, one of the greatest conductors of all time who led the Berlin Philharmonic in the late 19th century was the wonderful Arthur Nikisch. Now, there's a wonderful well, it's been videoized, but a film, a very early, crude film of Nikisch conducting. And what one notices is that his movements are quite economical, but they're very declarative. There's no messing around when you're watching Nikisch conduct. You know exactly where he's going. And I would say, in general, conductors from the late 19th and early 20th century tended to emphasize the economy of motion as opposed to histrionics. But let's go into some specifics using some of my favorite late 19th and early 20th century conductors as an example. Mengelberg, Wilhelm Mengelberg of the Concertgebouw Orchestra, he was generally economic with his hand motions. Occasionally, he'd be a bit more forceful. But what was most interesting about Mengelberg, based on the film footage that we've got, is his facial expressions. While his arms were generally rather on the tame side and yet very easy to follow, he was a notorious rehearser. He really wanted things just the way he liked it. And the precision of his performances really shows rather that his rehearsals were successful. But in performance, a lot of the cues he's giving to the orchestra are from his eyes, his facial expressions, which is sort of classic Mengelberg. And you see, even in still photographs of him, he was very facially expressive. So, more than his arms, he would use his face to communicate. Furtwängler, one of my other favorite conductors, again, generally on the economic side, but at times he would go into an almost not hysterical, but almost, it was as though the music was taking over, and what may have begun as rather straight arm movements became sort of very pulsating as he would rock with his arms and occasionally with his body as well. Furtwängler once said that the role of the great musician is to transform the sensual into the spiritual, and he literally wore that phrase on his face and expressed it with his bodily motions. And obviously, you can look at all of these, and I encourage you to go to YouTube and look at all of these different conductors. The shaking of Furtwängler as the music intensifies, the intense facial expressions of Mengelberg. Another one of my favorite conductors, who was on film and later video quite a lot, was Leopold Stokowski. Now, he was, of course, very expressive. In a video I made earlier, I called him in many ways the first conductor to cross the barrier between art music and pop music, not because he went pop, but because his records were so popular and his appearances in film, which were a result of his popular records, showed that he was very expressive. Again, in terms of his legs, not particularly, ballet like, but very expressive with his arms and with his face. So again, three different amazing conductors of this golden age of conducting, three very different styles. Richard Strauss, the great composer, but also a great conductor, incredibly economical with his style. Later on, he was around in the early 20th century, but became most famous in Chicago in the 50s and 60s. Fritz Reiner, incredibly economical with his style. And then you've got Karl Böhm, who again, very much with the arms. Boom had an arm like no other. He could be an NFL quarterback, yet still overall economic. The conductors that really became, I think, most well known for their more full bodied style were two very different men. The more conservative leaning Furtwängler and the more progressive, and we're talking in a musical sense, but in his case, it applies to politics as well, Leonard Bernstein. Leonard Bernstein was among the most physically expressive and flamboyant men on the podium. And you can see he loved the television. He was one of the first conductors to really embrace television as a medium to communicate classical music to a mass audience. Furtwängler did, pardon me, Karajan did the same, but he didn't do it with interviews or with lectures. He did it with concert, film, and video. And while Bernstein was almost sort of hysterical in his movements, Karajan was almost like a dancer, like a ballet dancer. His legs didn't move, but his arm movements had that elegant legato feel that matched the music. And I would say again, Karajan's arms, were very much akin to a ballet dancer's legs. And I would say that weirdly, as the 20th century moved on and conducting tended to get less creative, less of this rubato, less of an understanding that the melody must shape and guide the rhythm. So as the music got more regimented and metronomic, the physical expressions of the conductors tended to get more and more animated. Maybe this was because conductors looked at the television success of Bernstein in the US and Carillon in Central and much of Europe and thought we're going to imitate that. Maybe it was because the music, if you're conducting it in more of a metronomic style that doesn't necessarily require the orchestra to pay such close attention to every movement the way they would have had to done with a Mengelberg or a Furtwängler, maybe they thought, well, I've got to add something to create tension and emotion. And so, because of that, we do see a trend to more physicality in conducting as the mid 20th century shifted to the later 20th century. As for the conductor in the video itself, she's definitely on the expressive side, but it's nothing too far out of the ordinary in terms of the last 40 years or so of conducting, when, as I said, things have got a lot more expressive. Another trend that you might notice is that with youth orchestras, conductors tend to be more expressive because the orchestra might need more firm physical cues. They might not be able to read the subtleties of small arm motions or facial expressions. So that's a trend we see as well. But obviously, this conductor that has gone viral, Dalia Sasivetska. So I do apologize for not pronouncing the name correctly, but she's definitely on the expressive side. But there's nothing about the performance per se that's particularly unusual in this modern context. It's something that Arthur Nikesh would probably find a bit over the top. Maybe Mengelberg and Furtwängler would too. Bernstein would have probably loved it. Carillon, it is really hard to say what he would have thought. Her movements are much more angular and less ballet-like than Carillon. So again, impossible to put thoughts, let alone words, into the minds of the dead. But like all viral posts, they're fun. But it's kind of much ado about nothing. If we wanted to criticize conductors for being overly physical, we could again begin with this contrast between late 19th and early 20th century styles that were more economical and the later part of the 20th century into the 21st. Knappertsbusch, another that I love, very dramatic, yet his motions were more almost like casting a spell rather than very frantic in this Bernstein style that I would say Miss Dahlia Savetska is more in that Bernstein style. Knappertsbusch, again, one of my favorite conductors. In one case or another, I wish everyone well. I hope going viral is good for her career. I don't know anything about her. I'm sure we'll all find out more. But like I said, virality is very fun. People get to pretend to be angry. Some people make money, some people don't. Everyone gets to have a good time and maybe even learn something. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. No learning, no learning allowed. Just fun. But hey, I find learning about this stuff fun because hey, I love my music. So that's my take on this viral video. Let me know what your take is. And as always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.